In Malaysia, a storm is brewing over the construction of an Australian refinery to process rare earth metals. These chemicals are crucial in the manufacturing of electronic goods like DVD players, computers and weapons, but they also produce radioactive waste. I'm Fauzia Ibrahim. On this edition of 101 East, we ask, is the Malaysian government risking environmental damage over financial gain?
This is a nice spot. I like to bring my family here. We like to walk here and go down to the beach sometimes, pick shells. I've been always wanting to bring my son Ryan to go fishing, and we try to make quality time together, and it has been great.
Vincent Diam likes to fish. Today, he's brought his 10-year-old son along to one of his favorite spots along the east coast of Malaysia. But he's worried that in future, these fishing trips may not be possible.
Radioactive materials, if they get into the sea, they do affect the fish. They may die, or they may actually become supersized.
Vincent fears a $230 million refinery being built a few kilometers away will pollute the area. An Australian company, Lynas, plans to bring rare earth from its mine 4,000 kilometres away in Mount Weld, Western Australia, and ship it here in Kuantan for refining.
Rare earth has many uses. So many uses and in such quantities that the whole world depends on it now. Like it or not, the gadgets you are having, the camera you're using, the television we're watching, they all contain rare earths.
Rare earths are chemical elements used in many of today's high-tech gadgets, from smartphones to missile guidance systems and green technology. But rare earths aren't actually rare, they're just hard to extract and can create serious environmental hazards, particularly from the disposal of radioactive waste. Two months ago, Vincent didn't know what rare earths were. Now he has nightmares about them. For the past 15 years, Vincent and his wife have run a Montessori school in Kuantan. But his main focus now is the Stop Lynas campaign.
I want to stop Lynas because I want our children to have a safer future. I'm not trying to be a hero, it's just that I can't run away from this.
Stop Lynas! Stop Lynas!
Vincent's become one of the leaders of the local community struggle to stop the refinery being built. In March, he went to Parliament to hand a petition to the Prime Minister.
I represent the whole country. I just wanted to appeal to the Prime Minister.
He's not the only resident to be upset.
We have the right to be concerned that the waste isn't properly managed. One can never tell if the containment vessel is going to leak or it's going to seep onto the groundwater and be carried far and wide. We were not given enough assurances that the technical aspects were truly taken care of.
We met with a group of environmental activists, community leaders, lawyers and other concerned citizens who've come together to fight the refinery.
We have made up our minds as people of Kuantan that we are going to continue getting petitions from the people on the ground. We are going to demonstrate if that needs to be, and we're going to meet ministers both on the government and the opposition side. We are going to continue to campaign in any way possible to get the message across to the relevant authorities to stop this project.
People are concerned about the risks to tourism, to the local fishing industry and general health and environmental hazards. But Lynas's chief executive, Nick Curtis, says the plant will be safe.
We use extremely safe, well-tried industrial processes that are used in European, American, German, Japanese industry. We will be tested monthly, independently by them, as to what's going on. Our licences are for a period of time and then renewed. We're kept appropriately on a very tight leash with respect to those standards. If we breach those standards, we will be shut down.
This rare earth processing plant is the first one to be built outside of China in nearly 30 years.
Once it's operational, the company hopes to be able to provide at least 1/3 of the world's demand for rare earth materials within about 2 years, thus effectively breaking China's monopoly over the industry.
Lynas hopes to complete construction by September. Despite the potential environmental hazards, the Malaysian government has offered a 12-year tax break for the plant. If rare earth prices stay at current high levels, it could generate about $1.7 billion a year in exports for the company. That's about 1% of the entire Malaysian economy. Lynas says it would cost at least 4 times more to build and operate the refinery back in Australia.
Our business is really a global business. It's got nothing to do with Australia. We happen to be endowed with a mine in Australia. Our markets aren't Australia. The material coming out of the ground is a high-value material, and shipping it in containers to a relevant location globally to refine them is not cost ineffective. It's perfectly cost effective. We didn't want to stay in Australia because, quite frankly, there isn't the infrastructure in the chemical industry and manufacturing industry in Australia to support this process.
There's been some comments that environmental regulations in Australia are much higher than they would be in Malaysia, and that's one of the reasons for looking at Malaysia as well. What's your comment?
Well, look, that's a very serious comment, and it's very ill-informed. The reality is that the Malaysian standards are as tight as anywhere in the world, in some cases tighter. Our material has some radioactive material in it. It is what we call naturally occurring radioactive material, which is around you in every day in a lot of different materials. And Malaysia actually has very tight standards. The Atomic Energy Licensing Board is a very good institution in terms of understanding these issues. Malaysia is only one of 2 countries in the world where any material that comes into Malaysia that has naturally occurring radioactive levels must be regulated. In Australia, that doesn't occur.
Despite repeated requests for permission to film inside the plant, we were denied access. The company says this is because of safety and commercial security concerns.
But they did say the plant will house the latest in pollution control equipment and radiation sensors.
I understand, of course, it's appropriate that people have concerns. They're heightened today with the issues in Japan. Obviously, anything that you talk about as radioactive heightens people's sensitivity today. And it's appropriate that the community actually ask us tough questions and really try and understand what the facts are. But it's a very different situation.
It's a view backed by scientists.
People who are equating Fukushima and what is going to happen in Gabang is not a fair comparison. We are talking of a huge outburst of radioactivity. But in Gabang, we are only talking about low level of radiation. No matter how high you may accumulate it, it will never be the same amount of radiation that people will be exposed to as in a nuclear plant accident.
But emotions are running high.
Kami tidak berpuas hati dengan dialog tersebut. Kita menengok China, Melayu, India, semua tak setuju lain di pantai.
Local government and the Atomic Energy Licensing Board have tried to address concerns.
You still haven't answered my question, actually.
But the meetings got so rowdy that the Chief Minister cancelled the second week of forums. He also declined our request for an interview.
The problem is this: we are dealing with the world's largest rare earth plant, and it goes back to the question of waste management again. Yes, the thorium level may be low, but when collectively you have huge amounts, we are talking about generating tens of thousands of thorium waste per year. What would the radiation level be like then, you know? They can give us assurance on what you have said earlier about the low levels, but what about accumulated waste? That's what we want to know.
This isn't the first time Malaysians have had a bad experience with thorium, a radioactive substance often found in rare earth deposits. This is the site of Malaysia's previous rare earth refinery in Bukit Merah, owned by the Japanese Mitsubishi company. The plant was closed in 1992, after it was linked to several cases of leukemia and miscarriages.
For me, it's like deja vu. It's like history repeating itself when the governments at highest political level and the agencies all say it is safe. I'm not convinced that it is.
Mina Rahman, an environmental lawyer now based in Switzerland, was a key player in the Bukit Merah court case against Mitsubishi. It took 35 months for Mina and the other residents to get the plant closed.
lead and thorium were appearing in the waste. We had mothers miscarrying babies. We had children who were already beginning to be diagnosed with leukemia. So we had a lot of health evidence on our side, and we had scientists on our side who testified that the radiation levels were actually elevated around the Bukit Merah area. And so for us that was enough to show that the people's concerns were real, they were not a figment of imagination, and for us this was like the Malaysian Erin Brockovich.
In 1987, He Yun Tat was arrested for protesting against the plant. He was jailed for 2 months under terrorist laws, but his fight was vindicated.
The verdict in 1984 was to stop the plant. The court said that human lives were more important than the economy, and that they need to settle the waste. But there wasn't any compensation because they said, we can't prove that the medical problems were a result of the plant.
29-year-old Chia Kok Leong was born with severe mental disabilities. His mother believes his condition is directly related to her time spent working at the Mitsubishi chemical refinery.
There was a bad smell. The smell made my head giddy. Every day I had to drink lots of water. The water at the plant made our arms and legs itch. I didn't know what it was. No one said what it was.
She says by the time she realized something was wrong, it was too late.
If that new refinery is allowed to operate, and there is poison in the waste, if the children are born like my son, what are you going to do about this?
And if I were a mother living in around the Linus area, I have every right to be as concerned as the mother of Bukit Merah, because I would not want to risk the life of my child for the sake of profit of one company which is making millions out of the people of Malaysia.
Mitsubishi is still involved in a multi-million-dollar cleanup project in Bukit Merah. But Linus says the levels of thorium in their refinery will be much lower than those at the Mitsubishi plant.
The control of that site was so poor, children were allowed to run on the sites where the contaminated material was. That shouldn't have happened. That will not happen under my watch, under our company.
But residents in the two states remain unconvinced.
Here, in the Linus case, we discover that the preliminary environmental impact assessment, which is not up for public scrutiny, is in the secret room of the Department of Environment. The Atomic Energy Licensing Board, who says that it's safe, does not give more information than that. We do not know what the amount of waste is that's being produced, where the waste is going to be stored.
Under the International Basel Convention, the processed waste cannot be removed from Malaysia. Linus says the waste will be placed in engineered storage cells designed to stop leakage into the environment. But retired scientist Wong Yu Chung, who tested for radioactivity at Bukit Merah in the 1980s, says he's not convinced the refinery will be safe.
No matter how pure you can produce a rare earth oxide, the discharge will still contain thorium. That is the thing I'm concerned about. Now, is there a way, is there a technology, in other words, that can reduce the radioactivity of the thorium? Is there a way of packaging it so that it won't be a hazard, even in the event of a natural catastrophe?
The public outcry over the refinery is being heard. In recent weeks, the government has asked for an independent panel to look into environmental concerns. But with the plant almost half built, Vincent knows the chances of the refinery being shut down are slim. But he's determined to keep on fighting.
That report by Kathy Hearn. For more on the dangers posed by the rare earth refinery in Kuantan, Malaysia, we're joined by Fuzia Saleh, a Member of Parliament for the Kuantan constituency and a long-time critic of the refinery. Kamal Nathan Panchanathan is also a Member of Parliament and part of the ruling National Front coalition. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Kamal, if I could start with you, how important is this refinery plant to Malaysia in terms of jobs, in terms of the economy?
Okay, when you ask about just a refinery plant, of course, provided it fulfills all requirement of safety, if it's not health hazardous, if everything is approved, then we are looking into an extremely big amount of investment which goes into billions, and it also provides job opportunity to Malaysians.
Are you able to give us a figure? How many billions will this bring into
I think
Malaysia?
we're looking
How
into
many
about
jobs will it create?
Hundreds and thousands of employment opportunity, and I think as far as investments are concerned, I think we're looking into easily about 2 billion. It's $1 billion investment we're talking about here. Okay, that's what the potential of this refinery is.
Fuzia, are you saying no to a $1 billion plant, a plant that can bring in jobs?
I would like to refute what Kamal and Nathan have just said with regards to jobs. The plant itself will only offer 350 jobs. It is not a labor-intensive plant. It is more technical.
But what about the trickle-down effect?
Exactly.
Of course, there will be trickle-down effects, but then we also have to weigh the risk versus the benefits. Let's look into this refinery. Company liners will enjoy 12 years of tax holiday, and meaning that Malaysia will not gain in terms of taxes. It will have about a value of 8 billion ringgit Malaysia, or 2.6 billion worth of export value, which is not taxable, and it is 100% Australian owned. It does not provide much job opportunities.
If you say that this does not benefit the community nor the country, who benefits from this refinery plant?
I would say that the greatest benefactor will be liners itself, the company, because their export value, as I said, will amount to 2.6 billion US dollars per year.
Well, let's move on to the risks now. You brought up the subject of the risk. What evidence do you have that this particular plant will affect the environment of the surroundings?
Okay, number one, we do not have such a refinery outside China. There is no such refinery. There is no country in the world that has such a refinery. Okay, that's number one.
So why not Malaysia be the first?
Malaysia, okay. Number two, the nearest benchmark that we have outside China will be the refinery that is proposed to be built in Mount Pass, California. Then also, Linus acquired this Mountwell mine from Ashton, which is a company, an Australian company. I studied into the waste management plan. It mentioned about radionuclides in the waste. It mentioned that it is a hazardous industry. There's lots of hazardous materials. I'm not quoting myself. I'm quoting journals in the European Parliament
but still,
papers
you
and
have
so
no
on.
evidence that this particular refinery built in Malaysia will be hazardous to the environment. There is no concrete evidence?
But neither do we have evidence or best practice on this particular refinery.
You see now, the government of Malaysia, we are committed. The Prime Minister have said, if there is going to be something like that, okay, we are not going to do it. The government of Malaysia have clearly said that they are going to start up an international panel to evaluate this thing.
Why is it that the independent panel is being set up now? Why wasn't it set up before ground was broken?
It's better now. That's the thing.
The plant is being constructed now.
It's better late
than
never.
The approval has been given now.
Never. The approval is just
but
to start.
surely,
but
the independent panel
should
should have reviewed the safety and health operations of the plant before.
I agree with you. But I also believe it's better late than never. If there's an issue, we have immediately, when there's issue up, people are not too happy about it, we have immediately set up. We didn't wait. We could have gone because based on whatever points we have, it's safe.
If the independent panel finds something wrong with the operations, will you halt construction?
Obviously, because if the independent panel says, no, you cannot do this because of the safety measures, I am sure this government will heed by that advice, because that is why we have asked for the independent panel. AELB is not the only approving authority. We have another 5 more agencies in the government that's going to give approval. We have only got 1. And the Prime Minister, upon listening to this, the queries and the concerns of the people, has immediately come up and said, let's set up this independent panel and let them come out with the decision.
Fuzia, your opinion on the independent panel?
The same question that you asked, why now? Why were not the public consulted before the license was given to set up? That was in 2008. I raised it up in November 2008 in Parliament. It was only after that AELB came into the picture and consulted. They did not consult, even then, they did not consult the public. They consulted head of departments, agencies, whereas there was no public consultation. We don't have freedom of information at here.
I got this information. It's actually how much effort you want to put to get this information. And having said that, when we talk about hazards, when we talk about chemical hazards, if you're talking about hazardous industry, then the chemical industry and the petroleum industry is also hazardous. When you talk about the MSV emission, when you talk about radiation emission in this country, even smoking a cigarette produces more MSV compared to the radiation that's going to be
That's a fair enough point.
Okay.
In itself.
So then are we going to say
every industry would have some sort of hazardous material.
That is what we are doing now. We want to, okay, fine, there are concerns from the general public. We accept it. We are not saying we are not concerned about you. We are not going to do anything about it.
But you should have it's a bit late, don't you think? 70% of the plan is up.
Yeah, but this government is telling you now that we are going to this independent panel, and if the independent panel finds out, tells us a report to say that this is not safe, we will hit by that.
What are you going to do with the toxic waste? Is Malaysia going to become a dumping ground?
No, I don't think so. And I don't think the government of Malaysia, especially the Prime Minister, would let that happen. We have people first. And the fact this independent panel has come up is because we want to preach what we talk. It's people first. People have expressed concern. This independent panel will put that into perspective, and the government of Malaysia will heed by the calls by the independent.
Fuzia, are you just as confident?
No, because number one, the term of reference are not clear. The public has a right in determining the panel of experts, who they are, and also in determining the discipline, because it's not only about atomic energy, it's not only about radioactivity, it also involves people, toxicologists, environmentalists, public health experts, geologists. We have to consult all of them.
Kamal, is it fair to say that the Malaysian government is putting financial gains ahead of the environmental concerns?
No, I don't think it's fair to say. Like what she said, the first 12 years you're not going to get anything. Okay? But what is important now is we are looking into long term. We want to show the world that Malaysia is investor friendly. We want to give opportunities for foreign companies to come and invest in Malaysia. As a country that is responsible to develop this country, as a government that is responsible to develop this country, we will do whatever it takes to attract investors, but not at the risk of hurting our Malaysians. We will not do that. And now, I think this is very clear. When foreign investment wants to come into this country, we give them initial approval to set up things. But if thing goes wrong, we will stop them. That's what is happening right now. We cannot, any foreign investor that's coming into this country, we cannot tell them, wait, I want to go and ask my people first whether it's okay. We cannot run countries like that. We give them initial approval, but when there's public feedback, we'll tell them, now, I think there's a concern, we will do this panel. The panel's outcome will determine where we go from here. I think that's fair.
Fuzia, what does this panel have to do to convince you that this refinery is safe for the people of Kuantan, for the environment of Kuantan?
This panel will have to look into the various safety procedures in terms of handling of the ore, the transportation, in terms of handling of the waste, the procedures, what happens if there's flood, what happens if there's spillage. Such a refinery is the only one of its kind outside China. The Malaysian authorities should have been more alert on this. Public consultation must take place prior. Kamal said there's no country can do that. Other countries, other developed countries do that. In America, in Australia, where Linus comes from, it is a practice to consult the public.
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us.
Our pleasure to be here. Thank you as well.
That's all the time we have for this edition of 101 East. You can always follow the program through our website, podcast and Facebook. From all the team here in Kuala Lumpur, thanks for watching.